wanted to understand the finances and the equity position of eXp Realty, and actually understand the stock and our P&Ls and what's happening on NASDAQ, we did a leadership event, I believe it was May, and we had about, I don't know, 100 of us there. You had to sponsor 15 or more to come to the event. Everybody's invited, just sign up for these 15, we'll do it again this April. And Kevin Cottrell spoke as eloquently and professionally and intelligently articulated the stock, our P&Ls, our cash position, where we're headed as a company, and did basically the company finances better than I'd ever heard anybody do it. We were all blown away. I go, you have to come back in August, and you have to do it again. So, and he's got a huge eXp business. Help me welcome to the stage, Kevin Cottrell. Give him a hand. Here he comes, from the back of the room. Okay. Just hop up, you can do it. You're not gonna do it, all right. Smart on that.
So the fun part about this is there's a lore on these events of nobody wants to follow Gene. So given that I'm a business partner with Gene, they decided that I got the slot after him. And I get to talk about things like financials. I don't know. I think Brad looked at this with James and said, yeah, let's do that to Kevin. He can deal with it. So where this all started was Gene's on the board of directors. So as a publicly traded company, Gene can't talk about things. So we were going to meeting after meeting after meeting, and after I got done telling people, oh, well, you know what, Gene can't talk about that, Gene looked at me and said, well, you better start boning up on this stuff, because you're going to have to deal with most of these people in these inquiries. And that's where it really started from. My background is, I did graduate from Northwestern with a finance degree. I have never worked on Wall Street, never worked on finance, but I do have an aptitude for this. And what I hope for you to get out of this is the lack of your scenario where you get into a panic when some prospect for attraction looks at you and says, you guys just lost a bunch of money last quarter. What's wrong with your financials? And you look around and go, what am I going to say? Today's going to be about, what am I going to say? How do I deal with that? I will deal with some of this stuff on a high level. My main goal for you is to give you enough of this so that you at least know how to handle some of the basics. The second thing I'm going to do is, with one of our partners in Texas, is I have been asked 100 times to do this, and I'm finally going to do this, is I'm going to record about an hour's worth of modules broken down in small pieces that will be up on Brett's organization's website that he gives you for resources, and then also Gene's as well. So everybody has this available. I'm only a limited number of cycles. I mean, what normally happens is I'm driving along, it's 10:30 at night, this happened last week. I get a 911 text, somebody's got a brokerage that has some questions, and it's make or break time on whether it happens. And I'm like, sure, I'll get on the phone with you. And 3 calls later, at close to midnight, we're done. But that doesn't scale. So let's get into some of the specifics. I want you to understand some of the basics of finances. You run your business different than a publicly traded company. So I'll try and tie some of this into how it relates to your real estate practice, and maybe if you were a broker, how it relates to your brokerage. Gap accounting is essentially an accounting provision so that all publicly traded companies go by the same set of standards. This is one of the reasons that the books are audited, just like eXp's, so that at the end of the day, you have continuity in terms of what the processes are. There are a lot of, as I'll talk about in a minute, non-cash adjustments. Why this is important is you end up with these big losses, a bunch of which I'll show you specific numbers on, are not cash. It doesn't mean we're actually paying money out and losing money on a cash basis. Just like if you had a real estate practice and you go looking at your checking account and you had $100,000 in there, and if you're a publicly traded company, you had $250,000 loss after your gap adjustments, and I'll show you what those are in a minute, you didn't really lose all that money. You look at your bank account and you're like, I have more money there than I did last month. And I'm going to show you how that flows in the finances of eXp. Gross profit, net loss, adjusted EBITDA. I will get into specifics. I'm going to have you understand the basics of that, because that's the core way to explain to somebody from an attraction standpoint how our finances really work and what's really going on behind the scene, and point 2 or 3 things out to them that will have them understand, as a real estate practitioner or maybe a broker owner, why we're not going to go out of business, why we're accumulating cash and we're debt free. So productivity numbers versus peers. I'm just going to touch on this. This is a big one, right? Doesn't matter if it's an Inman article, doesn't matter if it's an issue where it comes up and they're like, wait a minute, you guys are on this list and it looks like none of your agents are doing production. This is why it's the case. No brokerage in the history of residential real estate, other than an entity acquiring agents, has grown at the pace that eXp has grown. What that means is your agent count is going up more than 100%. We're adding agents and they don't bring their business right away. Right? They come on, they close out all their pendings at the old brokerage, then they're here for 90 days, and then they start to affect our numbers. If I'm Homeless Services of America or another acquirer like Compass, it's completely different. I buy the company, I roll it all in, and it goes into my numbers immediately. It's a 90-day difference. So don't look for our per-person productivity until we get to a stabilized number on the agent count, which I think we all realize in here, it's not going to happen for any long period of time, right? You can't grow at 100% and compare us to a company that only grew more than we did because they bought companies. It's not the same thing. They get to count all the numbers, we don't. So eXp is debt free. I get a lot of questions about the secondary offering, institutional investors. As a company that did not go public the normal way, in other words, we did a reverse merger, we were on the over-the-counter stock exchange, and then we uplisted. We didn't go through the normal process of ending up with the institutional investors that would be there. There's no problem with that. It's just we're different. So Glenn and Penny and the large shareholder do not want to dilute the stock down and do a secondary offering. We have no debt, we don't need to. So the fact that people like to pick shots at eXp for not having institutional investors is more of a function of how we went public by uplisting, instead of going public the normal way where you end up with the institutional investors right from the beginning. The secondary offering, who knows? Down the road, maybe. We have enough stock out from agents trading on stock, and I'll talk about that, or other stock that's been purchased for the retail market to buy stock. If I'm an institutional investor, you saw what happened when we went on the Russell 2000. That was a huge win for the company. It shows a lot of credibility. All those index funds that follow that had to buy stock. So what that did is it drove our volume up. The average institutional investor has to take such a big position outside of that Russell 2000, they don't have an entry point to get into our stock. So that is the answer for why they're not there. Glenn and Penny and the big shareholders of our company are not going to go do a secondary just to do one. We don't need one. So let's talk about some of the specifics. This is the second quarter numbers. I'm going to highlight a couple of things in here, and then I'll get into the EBITDA adjustment so you can understand it. Obviously, organic revenue growth, over 100%. These are the kind of numbers that are just unheard of unless you're acquiring companies. And so when you look at the numbers, and I'm going to get into the adjusted EBITDA in more detail on the trend, but when you look at this, there are net losses for Q2 2019 and net losses for Q2 in 2018. And it's a slightly bigger number. Who thinks things are remarkably better with operations at the company since last November when Dave Kennard showed up? You don't build a world-class organization without scaling up, and we have doubled our company headcount. Those show up in the numbers and drive a loss. We don't need to double the number again to double the agent count. We're getting to the point where it's going to be more and more leveraged, and we're going to get ahead of this. We had to take the hit and invest in headcount, and that's why that number is slightly higher. But look at the number. Look how much more volume and how many more agents we had. And the loss is barely bigger. And that's what you want to pay attention to. The one that I spent a lot of time talking about, and this is not from a Wall Street perspective, but this is where you're going to get into me talking about it from the standpoint of the business of a real estate practice as an agent or a brokerage. Cash flow from operations. This means you started operating, you paid your expenses, and how much cash did you have left over? It's the way we would run our business as a debt-free real estate agent or a team. So if you look at the numbers there, look at the growth in one quarter, year over year. People that say, you guys are losing money like crazy, point to that number. We have no debt. And I'm going to show you the trend line for the last 4 years. We are not on a cash basis losing money at all. Hard stop, end of story. We have a huge number. It's the biggest percentage increase year over year. So despite all the growth team growing the company, us scaling up, adding all these agents, look at how much more cash we made in the second quarter. Look at the transaction size, look at the transaction volume. Get to the next slide here. So, this is the trend line when you look at March 18 versus March 19. I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this so you can look at this. There's the net income at the top. And again, I will do a much more detailed slide, a video on this with the slides. Look at the second to the last numbers. Stock compensation. Who here loves the fact that you can take 5% of your gross commission and buy at a 20% discount? As a publicly traded company, we have to write off the 20%. So as we add more and more agents, what happens? The number gets bigger and bigger. We're not losing more money. This is one of those non-cash items. Comes out of the treasury for the parent company, the shares are issued, we take the hit. There's some amortization going on in terms of how they write it off, but look at how big those numbers are. Stock options deal with employees and other programs. But if you look at it from the standpoint of the adjustment, the numbers are headed the right way. This is what I want you to look at, 2018 versus 2017, and then I've got the 2019 numbers year to date in here. So our adjusted EBITDA, this is after we basically take the non-cash items in there. We did a $3.9 million loss in 2017. We turned around and had a $2.4 million profit. Again, despite doubling, and then doubling again, and then growing, and the team investing in the staff to scale up so we can double again in the next 12 months. 2019, first 2 quarters, we're at a $3 million adjusted profit. Again, that number is what happens when we take the non-cash items for the stock and the other things out of there. We actually are making money. I'm going to show you in a second a little bit more on the cash flow so you can see how fast that grows up. The last bullet I'm going to spend a minute on, because this is something as we invest and as the business grows and as we add so many agents is the wild card in all this. It's a good thing. We have to have consistency in our growth. We need to be gap positive, which means even after all those non-cash adjustments. That's what we hear people say about us being profitable from a gap profitability standpoint. What Jeff Whiteside or Glenn are talking about is even after all the stock programs, all the adjustments, all those millions of dollars in there, they want us to be making so much money that that number is still positive after all the paper write-offs. And so what that requires is for us to get ramped to a certain side. The second thing it requires, which I'm not going to get to talk about here today, is we need to have our capture rate on affiliated services be above standard for the industry. The company is creating opportunities for you between the interland and the other opportunities and the other affiliated services. Those drop basically to the bottom line on margin and profitability. We are going to need to do that. And then we from the standpoint of scalability, will see the benefit of that. The last thing that's not on the bullet here, but I actually talked to Jeff Whiteside about, we had a disproportionate amount of agents cap in the second quarter, and so that had a little bit of a negative effect. Those are the variability quarter to quarter that you're going to see. Cash flow. Imagine, I'm just going to keep it simple. You're a real estate practitioner. It's 2016. At the end of the year in 2015, you had $600,000 in the bank. You had no debt. You grew your business, you did your transactions, you paid your bills. At the end of the year, you had $1 million. Did you lose money? You couldn't. You had more cash. We don't borrow money. This is the way you start to explain this to people. As a publicly traded company, we have all these offsets, but we're making money. Look how fast we're accumulating cash. When I dug into this with Jeff Whiteside and a couple of other people, I'm like, oh my God, nobody realizes how much cash we're making. Next year, in just the fourth quarter of 2017, we made more money in the fourth quarter than we did the entire previous year. 1.7 million. Total of 4.6 million. 2018, 5.5 million in just the fourth quarter, more than we made the entire previous year. You see a pattern here. We're stacking cash up at an incredible rate. Now's when it gets fun. 5.5 million at the end of 2018. And the engine that drives this is the agents and our productivity and our closings. 24.3 million in cash. It can't go on at that gigantic run-up in pace, but look at the number this year. My estimate is 25 million in the fourth quarter this year, 55 and change in the entire year. Look at the actual number on the bottom there. We're already at a run rate where we did 18 million in cash from operations in the second quarter. So for those people that go back and look at that number and say, oh my God, you lost a boatload of money in the second quarter, point them at the number, it's on the financials. We actually put $18.1 million from cash flow from operations into the bank. The last thing, which I will not go spend a lot of time on, is we are such big proponents as an entity in our company that we believe that our stock is undervalued. We are investing, and that is the repurchase program that you see the company executing on. I would expect you'll see that to go up and increase over time. And that's a good thing. There are companies, Berkshire Hathaway is a good example. They've always been huge purchasers of their shares and buyback. Look at the price per share of that entity. It is a great thing for us to do that. We have opportunities to increase that. We really have two uses for cash in our business. Growth, both domestically and internationally, and then for us to buy our shares back. So the big question I'm going to wrap up with, and in the interest of time, make this discussion an answer for you. And there are a lot of factors in it. Number one question I get, other than these things, is why is the share price hovering around $9, $10, $11 a share? It used to be 17, 18 at the high. There are a number of dynamics going on. Number one, there was a big correction that occurred starting in late October, early November last year. We got caught up in that. We announced the repurchase, which the first quarter that occurred was in Q1 of this year, and then Q2. We've been buying a lot of shares. Again, I'm going to put some videos up. They only gave me a short little slot here, so I'm going to wrap up and keep us on time. Thank you very much.